It will make you very the way they designed it, but
Guys are awesome. How did your Python stuff go? Get it installed? Did you get your little program written? Kind of messy with the publisher stuff there. Their files weren't where they said they were, but you got them. So good job, good job. Okay. I was worried about it and I wanted to kind of see how it went. You guys just all handled it perfect. It can do such different things depending on where you get it. Do you realize we're in week 4? You know what that means? This is our quarter. It's like first quarter will be over after week 4 is over. So we're moving right along. You guys have been learning all this design stuff and getting your Python stuff going. That's fantastic. Everybody's been doing super good about keeping their masks on, and I just wanted to kind of remind you, you know, my husband and I had to order some more last night, and we ordered some of the little metal thingies to try to get them to stick to your nose a little bit better, stuff like that. So remember, it doesn't seem to be going away. We're going to have to keep using them. So if you need to get new ones, do. But keep them on. Let's keep clean, keep it working. We did have someone in here last week who has been tested. I'll let you know what they say, but they're test results because we have not heard yet. Remember to clean your area before you leave. If you notice, I haven't been harping at everybody about that. I am not a good person to harp on everybody. So take responsibility. Make sure your area gets cleaned up before you leave because you don't know who's coming in here after you go. And stay home if you're sick. The person who was here last week probably should have stayed home. So do stay home if you need to. I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of those things that we have going on right now so that we can all stick to it. Now, the Zoom session. I guess somebody's Zoom session got hacked the other night. Have you heard about that? These people jump into your Zoom session and do disgusting things. Yeah, highly entertaining, I'm sure, but I guess there was one this weekend that was like pretty scary. So I don't know where it happened Thursday. Some OTC instructor probably in health sciences because they do not deal with any deviation from the plan. If you've never been in health sciences, you might not know that, but nurses, they stick to the plan. And so somebody jumping in their Zoom session can't have it. So now when you get on Zoom, you're going to be placed in a waiting room. And I have to accept you and allow you in. So let everybody get in there and then I can let everybody in from the waiting room. Because if you miss the door opening, I might not open it again, depending on how well Zoom reminds me. So as a matter of fact, right now it says 10 people are waiting and it's showing me 3. So it's not super great at it, but we'll see how it works. So that's the only big difference is that it's making me keep you all sitting in a waiting room. Seems to be very slow about it. Yeah, we never have all the excitement. I guess that's good. We don't want that kind of excitement. Okay, so you should see my screen now. Do you see it? I get it. So we are still kind of on week 3, even though it's week 4, because we've got to do these labs, and we may just do one of these depending on how our time goes today. So don't worry about them. If I see that we're not going to have time to finish both of them, one of them will disappear. But we'll see, because you guys are pretty fast, and just doing one is enough practice. But I like for you to feel a little bit more confident than that. So we'll try to get both of them done. Now, before we get started on those, though, let's look ahead for what we have for this week. The reason why I'm okay with our week 3 stuff hanging over is because Wednesday we're going to have our first unit exam. So our unit exam will come from a test bank that's from your Prelude to Programming book. So all of the questions in the test bank are from that textbook. There are none from that beginning Python book. Question?
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I'm just checking. And so that's where all of our questions will come from. The test bank that they've created is a little unique. It's kind of like a lot of tests in our field. So there's a practice exam out here for you. If you don't take the practice exam, you will probably not do very well on the exam. I can just tell you from historically. The practice exam gives you an opportunity to see how the questions are phrased, what kind of answers are being expected, so that you can get an idea of what's going to be asked of you in the actual exam. The test bank is the same. So there is no difference between the practice exam test bank and the actual exam. I figure that is like a certification exam. In our field, people take certification exams to prove they have knowledge. And before they take that exam, they often will pay for a practice exam so that they know what to expect. And that's what this is for you guys. It's free though, you don't have to pay for it, but it's your practice exam. Now the other part we have is a little bit of a hands-on piece, and that'll be creating some pseudocode. So after today, you should feel much more confident in finishing that one. So let's take a look at what we need to do today. I've got our textbook open, and you don't have to go to this page. I just wanted to tell you where we are. We're at page 138, where they start talking about flowcharts. And I've got some flowcharts here to show you. You've probably all seen flowcharts before because they're so handy. They just show us how a process flows, how something works step by step, and we can kind of see a visual of the logic. And we've been talking the last couple of weeks about creating algorithms, step-by-step instructions for solving a problem. And we've seen that we've had this pseudocode with all these different words and things to describe that. Well, sometimes a flowchart is a little bit easier of a view to look at to describe that algorithm. This flowchart is about checking the weather. I like it though because it has some good things. So let's look at it. First of all, this flowchart has a start and a stop. That's good. And they use the right symbols for those. These symbols are called terminators. So that should go in your notes because those terminator or termination symbols are very important in programming and in software development. Sometimes in a flowchart, we'll see them as an oval symbol like this, and that just means the beginning and end. Now, if I left those out, you might be able to assume that you know where the beginning of the flowchart is, and assume you know where the end is, but you know what they say about assume, right? Yeah, you split it up into those 3 other words, and that's what it does to you when you make assumptions. So instead of becoming somebody who is making assumptions, we want to have a dedicated start and stop point in our flowchart. And then that way, when someone looks at it, they know exactly what's going on. In this flowchart, then, we have a few things that are just processes. So they used a rectangle. And that's exactly what we do when we just want to have a process, something happened. So the first weather channel, or the first rectangle gives instructions to check the weather channel. And then we have a decision diamond. And that's true in a flowchart also. That's the correct symbol. Anytime we have a decision, we would like that to be in a diamond symbol. And then I can look at that flowchart and say, oh, there's a decision being made right there because I see that diamond. The decision we have to make here in this flowchart is deciding if rain is predicted or not. If it is predicted, then we're going to stay home and end our flowchart. If it is not predicted, we're going to go play golf and end our flowchart. So notice how that decision has a yes path and a no path, and it does different things depending on the result of that answer, right? And that's how a flowchart should be formed, okay? So this is the correct way for us to do a decision. We've got the diamond, a yes and a no path, or a true and a false path, depending on what we're wanting to look at. So that's a good flowchart. It's not super fancy. It also has some comments, right? Right here, this thing, this comment in our flowchart, we might call it an annotation because it annotates the flowchart, adds more to it. Now here's another flowchart. This one I wanted to show you because you can see, first of all, it doesn't have a begin and end point. So we have to just kind of jump in there and assume the beginning is the beginning, right? And it shows us a looping structure. So it starts out with a decision and says, do you have homework? And then it makes some assumptions because it says, if you're following the no path, you are lying. And it will push you down into another decision. If you follow the yes path, it assumes you're telling the truth and pushes you into that same other decision. So that first decision was kind of meaningless, wasn't it? We ended up in the same place no matter what. But then our second decision, is it due in less than 12 hours? If so, start working. Well, now they used the wrong symbol there, didn't they? Because they basically ended the flowchart right there with their process that says to start working. So not exactly a valid flowchart. We can still get a lot of information out of it though. But notice how that symbol is not the right thing there. Now, if we say, is it due in less than 12 hours? No, we're going to go into a loop. And our loop is, what would you call this loop? Getting the stress level high enough. You all know people like that. They say, I like working under stress. So I don't like to do my homework until 5 minutes before it's due. Well, so that's what they're doing here with this loop. They're saying if it's not closer than 12 hours, I want to watch TV, play games, check Facebook, and then check again. Is it due in less than 12 hours? No. Well, then I can do all those things again, and I can check again. So notice how this line going back up into that decision diamond creates a looping effect, an over and over action. So the lines and the arrows on the lines are really important because they show us the flow of control and where things are going. And if we didn't have those arrows, we wouldn't necessarily know that after checking Facebook, we're supposed to come up and check that again. So we always need all of our arrows. And here's a super messy one. Whoops, not just the flowchart, huh? So here's our messy flowchart. You can tell just from looking at it, it's completely meaningless, right? It's just a mean. It doesn't really convey any sort of information because with the lines crossing over and using cloud symbols and things that don't belong in flowcharts, we can tell just from looking at it that it's not really going to convey any information to us. So this one is an example of a flowchart that doesn't follow the standards for flowcharting. And I have this other picture that I want to show you that doesn't follow standards. Have you ever seen those? They're pictures of cable in India, because at the time these pictures were taken, there were no cabling standards. So there was no rules to say if you're going to connect a phone line, you have to connect it in a certain way, like we have standards in the US for connecting things to electricity or telephone lines or cable TV. So this is why standards are super important, because if we look at this flowchart, it doesn't convey any meaning because it doesn't follow the standards for flowcharts. And if I look at this cabling, I can see that it's very dangerous and does not allow for expansion or identification of a wire that's gone bad or anything like that. because it doesn't follow standards. So a lot of the things that we talk about in our class won't be hard and fast rules, they'll be standards. Well, the way people like to do it is this way, and there's reasons for that to make sure everything's all nice and clean and all that good stuff. So for years, flowcharts have been out there and have been something that people like to use because they convey good information. So right here on page 140 in your textbook, they have the flowcharting symbols. So we see the terminator symbol, that oval. Notice in our textbook, it looks a little rounder than what we saw in the examples. The examples are really more correct. We have a process symbol, an input and output symbol, a decision, and then a connector for if we need to go from one spot off to another in our flowchart. So these symbols are universal in standards for flowcharts. And we will use flowcharts to describe snippets of code and different things all over the place. So if we brought somebody in as a guest to talk to you guys, and I won't because you have to wait until you're a little bit further along before those guest speakers really have much meaning to you. But if we did bring one in and you said, do flowcharts matter? They don't seem like they would matter to me. I want a code. I want to write that Python code. Those developers would say, yes, flowcharts matter very much because they help you to put down on a piece of paper your thought process and share that with somebody else in a nice pictorial way. So no, it's not your Python code, but it's still really important. So these are our symbols that we're going to use. So we have a little flowchart tool that we can try. Let's run it. It's called Raptor, and we'll only use it this week, just real quick on these assignments. But it's a really handy little way for us to create flowcharts. So let's see if you can find it. Raptor. And in your textbook, it tells you where you can download Raptor and install it. But again, you shouldn't need to. But if you want to, you can. Because some people that are more visual really like using Raptor for our assignments. So I've had some students that have used it to decide how they're going to do their Python programs because they just like the way it works and it helps them to clarify their thoughts. So we can do that really easily. Now in Raptor here, as soon as we open it up, we see a start and an end symbol, our terminators. And over here, can you see that? Not super good. Let me make this not be full screen here. I think there's a way I can zoom in. Now I can scale the flowchart that we're working on here in the middle, but I can't do much about the rest of the screen. So the area I'm referring to is over here where there are symbols. So this little area has all of the flowcharting symbols that we've seen, and we can use those by dragging them from the symbols area out onto our piece of paper here, our flowchart. So let's drag one out that would be an output, because that's the only Python statement we've done so far, is that print statement to output something. So let's try it here with Raptor. I'm going to drag that output symbol. Now you can see the output symbol is a little bit of a parallelogram, and it's pointing out to show you that this is something that's going to be printed out on the screen or to the paper or whatever. So now I want to make this symbol do something, so I'm going to double click on it. Whatever I type inside this text box will be what Raptor will output. So if I want it to be a string, I need to enclose it within the double quotes. So let's just make it say, hello world. We'll do our hello world. So I don't need any sort of commands around the string I want to output or anything, just double quotes. Let me spell it properly. Okay. Now, as soon as I've got my information typed in the text box that I want to output, I'm going to click done. Now notice that my output box looks a little different because Raptor shoved this put word in there. I can't type that in. I need to double click and go to that other screen to type in what I want to be output, and then Raptor will fix it for me. Okay, so now I've got this one command in my flowchart and I can run it. I'm going to click on execute. And so what we have happen when we run is Raptor starts executing our flowchart, and it will turn each symbol green as it executes it. So first it does my start, then it does my output, and then it does my end. Well, where did my output go? It went to this little master console window. So in my little master console window, I can see my output. Now, we have talked a little bit about variables. I could use a variable if I wanted to. That would be an assignment, which is also the process box. So let's grab it, the rectangle, and I'm going to put it right after the start. Oh, it's going to make me save. Okay. I'm going to go to my OneDrive and my 120 folder. And I'm going to just name this Raptor file, Hello World. Now, I've got this assignment or process box in there that I popped in. Let me make it do something. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to say that I want to create a variable named message. And I'm going to set my message to say, hello world. So if I were looking at pseudocode, my pseudocode line would say, set message to this variable. And you can see Raptor is trying to help us with that pseudocode, trying to match up with it a little bit so we have something to make sure it's actually correct. Now I'm going to click done. Now I want to change my output to use my message instead of using the same words. So I'm going to double click on that. And instead of saying hello world within double quotes, I'm going to say, well, I would like you to output whatever is in my message variable. Not much difference, right? Except that now I'm using a variable and I'm outputting my variable. So let's try running it, because I want you to see how this looks when we're running it in Raptor. I start, my message variable gets set, and then it outputs my message. In Raptor, our watch window is right here. So as we execute the flowchart, we'll see variables and their values displayed over here. If I want it to run really, really slow, so I can really watch it, I can grab this slider and bring my speed way down, and now I'll run it. And I see my variable, and it output my message, and finally it's done. Okay, so that's Raptor. So what we want to do is use the assignments that they're giving us in the book and create maybe a Raptor flowchart and some pseudocode to solve the design dilemma that they give us. So let's go find those. I'm bringing up my table of contents. And we saw last time, if I went to chapter 4 and then backed up one, I could get right to the problems, the programming problems that we want to see. Okay, so we want to do number 2 with your partner. So let's do number 1 together in class as an example, and then you should be ready to do number 2, and then we'll see if we have any time to do number 4, because we might just get rid of that one. So for number 1, we want to prompt for and input a saleswoman's sales for the month in dollars and her commission rate as a %. We want to output her commission for that month. We'll need to convert the percentage to a decimal. So they give us a list of variables that we're going to need, and they give us a formula that we're going to need. Now, if we want to, we can start with that IPO chart, that input, process, output. And if I create this chart on Word, it'll take a really long time because Word is so complaining about things. So I'm just going to put it up here real fast. And this is not required. That's not required for your assignment, but it's so helpful to help us kind of organize our thoughts. So for this application, what inputs are we going to have? They want the sales for the month in dollars. So our sales and her commission rate. And then our output is supposed to be commission for the month. So our processing then will be that formula. This one. So I'm going to kind of abbreviate. Commission earned is going to be equal to our sales amount times our commission rate divided by 100. Okay, so that's everything we need for our input, process, output chart. That's all that's going to happen for this program. We're going to prompt for the sales amount and the commission rate. We're going to do this formula, and then we're going to output the month's commission. We want to do things in a nice modular way, because remember, we want to always be doing modular programming so that we can split up our code and our functionality. So for this program, we're going to need a main module. We're going to need an input module that asks for the sales and the commission rate. We'll have a calculation module that calculates the commission and an output. So this is our hierarchy chart for our little application. So let's do some pseudocode. I mentioned last week that Notepad++ is just the best thing. So I'm going to find Notepad++ and do this with me, and we'll get some all created together. Now, when we open Notepad++, it does all these amazing things, and it becomes all things to all people it tries to be. It's basically an enhanced Notepad, and it comes up with tabs. So right now, if I start typing, I would be in this file named new one that I haven't saved yet. So our tabs are important up here to make sure that we're keeping track of which file we're working on. So let's save this. I already created my folder on my OneDrive for my 120 class. So I'm going to save this, and this is Chapter 3, Sales Commission, and this is going to be our pseudocode. I don't really need to put pseudo on there because if I were to look at that folder, I would know that since it's a text file, that's what it is. But it's kind of helpful anyways. So let's save that. Everybody get to save okay? OneDrive working?
Actually, I have a question real quick. How do I save as a raptor file?
Is it what?
Raptor file?
Your raptor file, you just should be able to save, and it'll save it for you as the right file type. And then we'll look at that folder after we're done and make sure we can find them all. Okay, so first of all, I want to try to zoom in a little bit. Oh, yay. So with Notepad++, you can control scroll. And I'm going to put in a comment or two. I'm going to say this is the salesperson's commission. And I'm going to put my name, and you should put yours. And then we'll put our date. And sometimes when we start a program or a pseudocode, we might not touch it again for 3 months. But that date is still going to be meaningful to us, right? Because that's going to remind us it's been 3 months since we touched it. So we might put some sort of revised date in if that's the case. I'll leave an empty comment at the end just to kind of separate out my code. So the first thing I have to do is declare all my variables. In our book, they like using this keyword declare. And I think that that's fun. So we'll declare some variables. They say we're going to need sales amount, commission rate, and commission earned. All of those look like numbers that need decimal places, don't they? They all look like floats. So we're going to declare sales amount, comma, commission rate. Well, I think I'll make it in an integer. Sorry, I'll explain in a minute. And commission earned as float. Then I'm going to go ahead and declare the commission rate as an integer, because since we're going to divide that by 100, we're assuming that it doesn't have any decimal places already. Okay, so now we've got our variables declared. And we had decided that we were going to use some different subprograms. So in our textbook, whenever they have a module like that or a subprogram, they do say like begin, or let's just say module input mod. So in our input module, I would kind of like to indent everything so that we can tell it's in the input module. The first thing I want to do is write out a prompt for our sales amount. So something like enter the sales for the month. And then we'll input whatever they type as our sales amount. And then we'll write out another prompt. What is the commission rate? And from that prompt, whatever they type, we'll input in as our commission rate variable. Now, this is a really cool thing about Notepad++, and this is the reason I told you it's a good tool to use. It starts doing this recognition of what we're typing. So now Notepad++ is saying, oh, I'm recognizing this word. I can drop one of these words in your code for you, which can save you a whole bunch of time, right? But I want a commission rate. So I can press the arrow key to go down to the right one, and then I can press space or enter. Well, space didn't work. Don't do that. I press enter and it drops it in there. Try tab and some different things because the different tools will do different keystrokes. Okay, so now that's the end of our input module, isn't it? We got our sales amount and our commission rate. So I'm going to put in our pseudocode that that's the end of that module. So think about that module kind of as its own standalone little thing. That's all it does. It jumps in and says, oh, how much were your sales? How much was your commission? All right, so our next module that we need is our calculations. And we don't have to define these modules in order, in any sort of order in our pseudocode, but to us logically it helps if we do. So let's do module calc. And in our calculations module, again, I'm going to indent so I can tell what's in that module. And we have a calculation here. Commission earned equals our sales amount times our commission rate divided by 100. Can you see all that? So that's our only line of code that we need in our calculation module. It seems like our module is dumb, right? No, it's not. It does that. That's what it does. It does all of our calculations. And in this program, we only have the one. So it's a perfectly fine module. So let's end it. And then our last module is going to be our output module. And in our output module, we're going to output just the month's commission is all they wanted. So let's write a message like commission for the month is, and then we're going to add the commission earned variable to that output. So remember when we do a plus sign like that, when we're writing information out and we're combining data, that's called concatenation. We're saying take this string with these double quotes and concatenate or add the value of this variable to that string. So that's going to end our output module. But we need one more module. We need our main module. So in our main module, we're going to call our input module. Then we're going to call our calc module that's just named calc. And then we're going to call our output module. And that's the end of our main module. So when this pseudocode program starts, theoretically, it's going to start running its main module. Its main module is going to call the input module. It's going to prompt the user for the sales amount and the commission amount. Return to the main module. The main module then will call the calculation, which will perform our calculation and return to the main module. The main module then will call our output, which will write out our output and return. So that finishes our pseudocode. Questions about it? Sense? Let's save it. So now I need to do this same algorithm, this same application as a Raptor flowchart. So let's open Raptor. I want to create a new Flowchart. And notice in Raptor that we have tabs. We didn't really notice them earlier, but our default page, our default flowchart page here has got the main tab. So we're already set up with kind of a main module. One thing that would go into this main module that is kind of hard to determine from our pseudocode are those declarations of variables. So let's copy or drag that assignment symbol in and save. I'm going to save. Okay. This is going to be chapter 3, sales commission, Raptor. And again, I don't need to put Raptor on it. The icon will tell me, but I just kind of like seeing that in my file list. Okay. So in our main module, we are going to declare our variables. So let's double click on this. The first variable we have is sales amount. Notice Raptor's not going to let me do a comma and more variables in here. I can only do one at a time. And Raptor also isn't going to ask me what data type it is, so I don't have any way to say it's float. So the way I can do that is by setting it to a value that is a float. So I'll say I want to set sales amount to 0.0 because it's going to have decimal places. And with Raptor, it doesn't matter because it's going to take care of it for us either way. We're just doing this to get into our good habits. Okay, and then the next variable we need was commission earned. And again, it's a float, so we'll set this to 0.0. So what I want you to do is notice how we can take the information directly from our pseudocode to create our flowchart. And we could go the opposite direction. If our brain liked doing the flowchart first, because that was more meaningful, we could do the flowchart first and convert that back to pseudocode. Because neither one of these is like the thing that has to come first. They're both design documents to help us get the algorithm all nailed down. Okay, I need one more variable, my commission rate. And I'm just going to set it to 0 because we decided it should be an integer. Then our main wants to do a call. And if you look at your symbols, you'll find the call symbol. Do you see it? It's right under that assignment. So we want a call symbol, and I'm going to drag it on here. When I double click on it, Raptor's going to ask me what that module name is going to be that I want to call. Well, we named our first one input mod. Now, as soon as I click done, Raptor's going to say, do you want to create a tab for that module? Say yes, we do want to. So now we'll be able to come to this page to put in our Raptor code for our input module. But we want to continue working with our main. So let's click back on the tab to our main. Now, after we call our input module, we're going to call our calculation, CALC. And yes, we want to create a tab for it. And then go back to our main. And then the last call we have is to our output module. I want a tab, and then I'm going to go back to my main. Okay, so our main is done now. This is everything that we had in our pseudocode for our main. So can we run this Let's try it. Setting up our variables. We see those in the watch window. Goes to our first module that just starts and ends and comes back. And finally our last one. So we can run it as long as we don't put anything that's in error anywhere. So that gives us kind of a simulation of how this thing is going to work. So now we're ready to put our code in our input module. Let's go to that module. Now Raptor is going to let us do our prompt and our saving of our data with one symbol. In our pseudocode, we have two, because we have the write statement and the input statement. But our input statement in Raptor will take care of both of those things for us. So let's grab an input symbol. Notice it looks just like the output, except the arrow is pointing in. And let's double click to open it. Now the top part says, how do you want to prompt your user? What should the prompt say? Well, our prompt said, enter the sales for the month. So could I copy and paste that whole string from my pseudocode into Raptor? Yep, and so as developers, we want to do that whenever we get a chance, and then that way we know we didn't make a typo and we're getting everything exactly the same. So enter the sales for the month, and then where are we going to save that data? Well, we said we're going to input that to sales amount. So that's where we want to save that data. One more. For this second input, our prompt is going to be, what is the commission rate? And we're going to save that data in our commission rate variable. Now we should be able to run this, and we should see the input prompts for both of our variables. Let's try it. I'm going to run it. Should start on our main, sets up our variables, runs our input module. First thing our input module does is prompt us for the sales for the month. So I'll say, oh, 10,000. Now, when I press enter, we should see that 10,000 go into my sales amount variable, right? Because that's where I said to save that data from this prompt. So that watch window will help us make sure everything's happening the way we think it is. So there it is. So now it's saying, what's the commission rate? Well, I'm going to say they get a whopping 40%. So when I click OK again, I should see my commission rate variable change to that. And then it goes through the rest of our modules that we haven't finished. Okay, so let's go to the calculation. In our calculation, we're going to use the assignment symbol, because whenever we're doing a calculation, we're just setting a variable equal to a value. And that's what our assignment does. So grab it. So.
How did you get the sales amount changed? I missed that part.
Do what?
The sales amount changed, like how did you change the number for that?
When I typed it in and when I was running it.
Oh, so you run it first?
When you run it, and then you should see that in your watch window changing. Good question.
Oh, gotcha.
Is it doing it? Is it letting you run it? Try it. Because sometimes I'm up here and then you do this and then you do this and you guys are like, what? So always yell. Okay, so now we're looking at our calculation module. And in our calculation module, We grabbed our assignment symbol and put it in between our start and end. Now in our module, in our assignment symbol, all we need is this calculation. So let's double click to open that. The set variable is going to be the variable that we want to contain our answer. So that'll be our commission earned. And the answer is going to be from the calculation, sales amount times commission rate divided by 100. Now that one I know it's really hard to see. So we just have that same formula that we've been using everywhere. We're just popping it into our Raptor flowchart this time. Let's say done. So now if we ran it again, we should see that commission earned variable get updated. But before we do that, let's go ahead and code our output module since we only have one line of code in it, or one symbol. In our output module, we need the output symbol. I'm going to double click on it to set it up. And what we want to output is this message. And I could actually copy that. Commission for the month is, plus our commission earned variable. I'd have to use Control V to paste it, but I can get that exact information into Raptor. So when I'm working with the output box, I'm going to say what I want to output just the same as I would in pseudocode. A string plus this variable. So we should be all done. Let's try it. I'm going to go ahead and run it. And it's going to set up our variables in our watch area, go to our input module, and prompt for sales for the month. So let's say our sales were 10,000. What is the commission rate? Let's make it 20. Then we're going to go to our calculation and calculate. We'll see our commission earned is 2,000. And finally, our output module will run and generate our nice output message. Commission for the month is $2,000. Okay, is everybody's work? I'm going to come look at them, see what you got. Now, while I'm checking on them, and I have a feeling that some people maybe aren't with us. So while I'm checking on these, you guys should get started on your first assignment. So we want to do the same thing, pseudocode and a Raptor flowchart for number 2. And this is what you want to work on with your study group. So notice we don't have really more variables, but we do have 2 calculations. Now, a little thing about this calculation, math people, people that are like engineering type of people, hate this calculation. They don't like it. They'll argue with me and say it doesn't come out right and stuff like that. Don't care. This is the calculation that we will use, okay? And it does work, and it does come out right, but it will drive your engineering minds crazy. Sorry about that, but go ahead and use it, because that's really not what our emphasis is today. Our emphasis today is getting the algorithm to work, so that's what we'll do. Okay, so if you guys whip through this, you're all done. The other one is number 4, and of course it's on the next page. Now, the other one is interesting because it's about 2 bowlers. So this one gives us an opportunity to maybe have more than just an input processing and output module. We can maybe do a little bit more, because maybe we could have a module that collects scores, and we call it once for Shannon's scores, and then we call it again for Jasmine's scores. So it just gives us a little bit more logic to think about with number 4. But I want everybody working on number 2. And right now, we just have just barely an hour. So the number 4 one, I'm going to change to make it not count towards your grade. And that way you and your group can decide if it's something you still want to kind of challenge yourselves with, or if it's something that you'd rather just leave behind and run on down the road and not worry about ever again, that's fine too. So I'll change it to not affect, because I just want you to have a chance to work with pseudocode and flowcharts before we move on to just using Python. Remember, our textbook, The Prelude to Programming, is trying to get you to think about programming concepts outside of a specific language. So we will keep going back to that and trying to stay away from Python brain. When you guys get to C#, I don't want you to only be able to think about things from a Python point of view. I want you to be able to think about them from an open any language point of view and focus on the language you're using. Okay, so I'm going to come around and check the ones you got while everybody's getting started. Let me move this down so you can see it, because I know some people might not have it. Okay, anybody that's working from home, reach out to your group, make sure they know you're there, make sure you're working with each other on Discord, where everybody might need to start bringing headphones and stuff like that. If your group isn't going to be.
So we're gonna work
But I think you guys are all here. You guys all did.
No, we're doing the second.
I had it, but I just opened it.
Oh, you're fine. I thought you did. I just didn't want to bore you, like I, you know.
Probably won't be side stuff. We're all working this through, all three of us.
We all have to turn it in.
Yes, we have to. That's what. I got a little bit confused with raptor, but.
Yeah, she has to, let them know something happens.
Yeah, so I just spied on how to keep it on there.
So this is basically just writing the entire thing out for them. And then you just fill it.
So, we're getting started.
Oh, yeah.
So it compares it. I'm gonna get that.
Yeah, it's all stamped back on the
How do you get it on? I'm just looking here.
So check your phone.
How do I save it as a server file?
You don't want to say that.
Do it on that. It's still like, included.
The raptor one will say that's.
Yeah.
That's
You really
weird.
So Python installed already.
Well,
So let's check. Python already installed.
I don't think so.
Get out there.
I just put super.
I think it is. You're good.
I saw the stuff by the clearing.
So. Free.
Big challenge.
That's it. So it's all installed.
So you get press.
Or the first time you did it, and you didn't even know it did it. And then after that, I got to ask if you wanted to repair it.
Yeah, I've done
But I think
basics.
you're okay, I think it's dead.
Yeah, I just ended up pocketing it. I didn't pocket it.
That's all right, I think you're okay. Double check whenever you're looking at that book, I think you're. Uh-huh.
You gave that record. You guys would do this because I could not find it.
Yes, it does. You don't have it on your phone.
Is there any way to use it?
So, yeah, these are.
I would just start typing it. Right. So, yeah, see if you can get it done without, and then that way you don't even have to. You know, if you sure can, but I don't want you to, that's if you don't have to. I guess.
I wanted to say, I got lost in the raptor thing. I did all this. I kind of got lost, so I kind of just kicked back and watched.
Okay.
And, I'm just on problem too right now.
Awesome, well, you guys all figure it out. Let me know if you need anything. Yeah. Turning would just be your prompt.
It's like a desert. Yeah, and it's floating points are like, that's.
So I'll try to post the video from our Zoom session, but sometimes it takes me a minute or so you need to stop, see when, and then flash. So that you don't think that it's in that doing it with us. So you just say, hey, hey, hey. We'll get you fixed. So yes, if you go to Discord. Have you used Discord yet?
I understand.
So what do you think right now? So these are the only ones that are out there right now, like last week. And then we get today's out there. It takes kind of a while to get them out there. You can- This is the best place to find them around Discord. And then the, do you have this book? The book does a really good job. It's no the other one. The book does a really good job of explaining it too.
Oh.
Okay, well, that is already. No.
Thanks to the step by step instructions to what they need. So this might be a better place for you to go in that video. So we already yeah. And I just be working on this one, guys. How are you guys? Good, good.
Oh, yeah. Item name. You need it.
What's that?
Item name. I'm pretty sure when
Yeah.
can't declare those in.
Yes.
What would it be if you declared?
Probably perfect.
Like a screen. That's all.
Yeah.
Clear the screen or don't bother.
They're kind of not very specific about that one, aren't they? So it was probably better to do, if you want it to be in your output message, then you would have a video recorded and one for it, and if you need it. They're not really very specific on that.
Need it so you want to see something on.
Did you get it? As long as you guys got.
That's what I have sometimes.
She said, I feel like.
I'd still want to use your
I'm not sure how.
I got now we work on total person well.
That's what I was worried about.
I understood everything.
Did you? Okay, that's amazing. You got it as long as you understand. All right, you feel good about going forward, that's all we're doing.
Well, honestly, I couldn't get the last one. I couldn't find the mile.
Oh, no, it would be.
Yeah,
I see what I was.
For which one?
Hold on.
Oh, the string and integer. Well, that's just the number size. So you would want to do integer, position, and number, and then float is just probably gonna be decimal. And then I have name string.
As long as you understand how to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, good, so we got a good copy for this. Good deal.
I know it's something I forget.
Yep.
So we don't.
I honestly just like,
No.
when I've done stuff like this before.
Do you want to declare it? I think you should. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Is ounces. Right. Oh, no, wait.
It should be an anti-social.
Oh, it's not.
Okay, I'm going to stop our Zoom session so I can record it.